Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure, very happy to be here, Brian. Um, I've been in sales and pre-sales longer than I like to admit, over 20 years. I began my career at some well-known companies. I was a developer and a project manager at Deloitte and KPMG. And good times, exciting times, but after a little bit of burnout, I essentially was working, marathon weeks. We'd have a half day off on the weekend. So I get to get on the train and do
Get
6
home,
hours
do
a
some
day.
laundry.
Yeah, turn around. And a savvy recruiter, I wish I had the guy's name. If I did, I'd send him a fruit basket every year. He helped me pivot and educate me on what is a sales engineer. So I did that career pivot around 1999. And I learned a lot because I joined a small startup called Segway Software, which is no longer an individual entity. They were sold to Borland, which was then turned around and sold to Micro Focus and then HP. So I don't know where they are today. But I got the unique experience of selling during the dot-com boom and the dot-com bust. And I learned very early how to pivot. We were selling, appointments, multiple appointments a week, running around Manhattan, to startups selling load testing software to make sure that their websites ran and their applications hummed. Well, then the boom happened, then the bust.
Yeah.
And when the bust happened, I'm at a trade show and I meet a gentleman who runs a VC. I said, let me ask you a question. He says, what do you do? And of course, discovery, I said, before I tell you that, let me ask you a question. What do you do, sir? Oh, I'm a VC. I buy portfolio companies. I stuff them in my portfolio, hold them for 5 years. I got it. So you give a company 5, 10, $20 million, and you tell them to spend it without a whole lot of governance. So marketing and tchotchkes and the bouncy balls and the light up toys. Yeah. And the people you're talking to are kids with funny haircuts and lots of piercings, but they're smart. Yeah. And maybe they buy a Super Bowl ad, about $1 million for 30 seconds. Well, if they buy a Super Bowl ad, and this has happened, and I had case studies in my mind, if they buy an ad and they spend 2-minute ad, maybe $4 million, what if they haven't tested that website? They've now spent $4 million to make the public crash their website and hurt their brand. Yep.
That's what I do.
Wouldn't it be a good idea to test the website first? So, that environment and that economic shift taught me how to pivot during a sales call, when meeting a new prospect, applying new use cases, learned a lot early on. But to jump forward, after Segway, just a whole laundry list of companies, big and small, in the governance, risk, and compliance space, where I worked both in pre-sales and also carrying a bag in sales. I actually worked for a company called Recall for a few years. They compete with Iron Mountain and eventually were bought by Iron Mountain. And that was exciting because back then it was a commodity sale. You're selling storage of tapes,
yeah.
Price per square foot or price per tape. We were also competing against a company that had an underground facility. So we learned when the other company is influencing the deal, when you should cut bait early, learned a lot of neat things. But to wrap it up, after several years as an SE and SE leader and sales leader, I've got most of the awards you're supposed to get. There's the revenue award, there's process innovation, there's product innovation. But it's been a fun ride because of that recognition, it's given me opportunities to influence the sales process. It's given me opportunities to lead a sales enablement team, to lead a go-to-market strategy team. So it's really been a fun ride, and I'm really, really happy to be here today.
And why didn't you either hop into sales or head back to development? What kept you in this space?
I turned from, long story short, I turned from development and project management to sales engineering, to sales, and then back to sales engineering.
Yeah.
I felt at the time that I had a passion for helping people and solving problems. But to me, the freedom of an SE with the diverse challenges, um, I guess what scared me, Brian, was going to the sales kickoff and
Oh, the truth.
watching my reps get their butts kicked in front of me over the forecast. So I'm like, do I want to do that? So yes, I'll still help people, but then I'll be in the spotlight and under the whip. And I felt that, I wanted a breakaway session for my team. I don't need to see my teammate get beat up.
Yeah.
I decided
Well,
I didn't.
that's
I
it.
didn't
I
care.
mean, people see the good side of the dark side, but they don't see the bad side of
Right,
it.
right.
And I got to imagine you probably like to be treated like a human being as well, as opposed to,
Yeah, you can be treated or mistreated in either role, but I've seen some
uh,
pretty tough deal reviews.
but the great thing about being in pre-sales is you're valued very highly in the
Yeah.
company because the reps compete for you.
Yes, yes. And once the reps start competing for you, you are very special.
Yeah.
If you've got three enterprise reps and they all want you and you're not available, yes, you become very special very quickly.
Yeah. And why did you like working with clients? What did you get out of that?
If I reflect kind of like on who I am, inherently I come from a long line of teachers. My mom, my grandma, and others were teachers. And in pre-sales, we have a saying, if you teach them how to use the product, you failed. We're not teaching them, it's not a class,
Right.
but that passion for helping people solve difficult problems or even learning what is the real problem they're trying to solve
Yeah.
is something I enjoy. By the time I went to college, I started with music, but then transitioned to psychology. And so the psychology of why people make decisions, what scares them, what motivates them, that I found was very, very interesting to me. And so I'm a big fan of some of the thought leaders like, Simon Sinek and others that prove we think we're logical creatures, but when it comes to a big decision, we go with our gut or our feeling, and then we manipulate or use data to justify what we think feels right.
Yeah. And are you often surprised that people overlook that when we're selling like logical stuff like technology? We're like, why aren't they get it? Why don't they get it?
Right, right. I've given them all the numbers, darn it. When you have that argument, you really need to go watch the Golden Circle for
Yeah.
Simon Sinek's Golden Circle for like the 10th time and listen and really listen. And then you need to change both your message and your approach, not to scare them. One of my favorite things that I do on my own is I swear that every deck, I hate decks, but they start out with about the company, big mistake. Then they go in, then they go into the problems that you have. Then they go into the solution. What's the last thing on the deck? Questions. A slide with a question mark. Do you have any questions? Well, from a psychological perspective, don't ever end with questions. Okay? If you end with questions, all they're going to remember are the doubts they have in their head, even if you gave them a great answer. So you do the questions absolutely in the middle or near the end. And then, like a lawyer, you do your summation. Okay, we've talked about these wonderful benefits and the ROI for customers like you, and your rollout date is April 15, and this is what bad things will happen if that date is missed. To meet that date, here's the steps we need, and you wrap it up. And you find agreement and you end on that high note. That's generally the idea.
Yeah. And how do you like to work, let's say a presentation demo with a rep? Let's say you fly in, it's on site. What's your style? Do you let the rep do what he wants and just sit there and answer questions? If he says, Why don't you take this one and show them the demo? Call me in if they have any questions.
Wow. Really glad you asked that question because I've worked with a number of VCs that had very draconian policies, everything from expenses to how you present. Some of the things I still do because they worked. Some of them were ludicrous. I once got dinged because I didn't use a flip chart. Well, it didn't call for a flip chart, so don't ding me internally if I didn't use a flip chart. Here's what did work. One of the techniques, and an interesting story. Oftentimes you're holding a pen, you're gesturing, or there's a pen near you. And rather than interrupting each other, if the question is ambiguous, right down the middle, and we don't know whose side of the fence it falls on, you either pick up your pen or you drop your pen. And that signals to your partner, I would like to take this question. Unfortunately, one time I was in a key account meeting, we unloaded the bus, the biggest deal the company was going to do. The CEO was there, the CFO, the CT, all the C people were there. And I was there, senior salespeople. And a really meaty question came along. And I kid you not, 6 people dropped their pen at the same time. And the customer looked around the room like, what on earth just happened?
Yeah. Well, I used to have that signal too, but more when my SE was talking too much.
Yeah.
He was from New York and he would just go and go and go. And he goes,
Yeah.
well, give me a signal when I go too much or too fast. And I just touched my ear, which meant slow down and let me take it for a second.
Okay. So my question to you is, which ear today is longer than the other?
Well, and I think it's important to have those signals,
Yeah, yeah,
especially when, it's one thing if you work with the same person every day for 3 years, you get your mojo going. But if you
yep,
fly in, you haven't worked with the rep before, you have different styles,
yes,
it's good to
yes,
kind of get that mojo.
yeah. I personally, I subscribe to, and I don't know who said it first. I've heard it on a plumbing website where they talk about customer success. They say the old adage that early is on time is late, late is unacceptable. I've heard that over and over, and it's drilled into me. So when I fly in, I'm probably at the customer's door an hour early.
Yeah.
There's going to be
Smart.
traffic, trains are not going to show up on time, whatever it is. Uh, if it is a bet the business type of an enterprise deal, I've booked that conference room an hour to 90 minutes early to check out every technology, back in the projector days when nothing plugged in right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, absolutely. So I always make that time, especially with an unfamiliar rep, if not a dry run the day before, if that doesn't happen and it's a busy week, coffee and, talk through the roles.
Yeah.
Who does what? You can't trip.
And I'm sure you've worked with great reps, okay
Mhm.
reps, and not so okay reps. Well, what made the great reps great in your mind, in your experience?
Top one, I'm sure you'd agree, is an innate curiosity
Yeah,
for the
not
customer,
nothing beats it.
for how things work. Um, then I always say that most problems in life and business can be solved with effective communication. So under communication, I'm going to talk about the active listening that everyone always talks about, um, understanding the psychology. I had a great mentor one time who rejected a candidate that I wanted to approve on our team. And I said, well, why? He was technically brilliant. He was personable. His presentation was buttoned up. What did I miss? And he says, well, when I asked him a few questions, and I don't know if you picked up on it, and in hindsight, I did not. When I asked him a question that required a brief answer, he gave me a long answer. When I asked a question that required a long answer, he gave me a brief answer. And there's an art to it.
Yeah.
And you really need to understand that art and peeling back the layers when it's appropriate. So he didn't get through. And one of my other mentors always said, in terms of going a layer deeper, because you can't workflow discovery. I mean, you can only go so far.
Yeah.
That being said, he said, as long as you're always thinking, and I'm using my quotey fingers now, the question behind the question.
Yes.
So you get asked the question, you think, who is the stakeholder asking that? What does he truly mean? Is there a reason I might need to clarify it? And if you always have that tune playing on recording, on repeat in your head, you're probably going to be pretty effective in the sales calls and in the discovery.
Well, getting the question behind the question, because nobody asks the real question, right? Like, how long has your company been in business? They don't care how long your company's been in business. They care about, are you going out of business? Right?
It's
Yeah, that's what they care about.
and it's ironic you said that, because back to that corporate intro that no one wants to see. Okay. There's it's a trap. And don't get caught in that trap, because first, you're not building any empathy out of the gate. And second, there's almost no right answer about your company that's not going to alienate someone. Here's an example. We're a startup, and because we're a startup, you don't have a long queue for customer success. You can talk to the VP and then the CEO any day of the week. Wonderful. You'll be out of business in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? You just scared them. We are a global company with 50,000 employees and 100 offices worldwide and thousands of customers. Great. My $2 million deal, I'll be like a bronze account that can't get anybody on the phone.
Yeah.
So there's really no value there.
And how, I got to believe, and I noticed when I was both a pre-sales and a salesperson, that the pre-sales people had a very good judgment on whether the deal would close.
Yeah.
Sometimes better than the salesperson.
It happens. Yeah.
Because they could sense whether the technical people really needed it or not.
Yeah. They're also in the seat, the hot seat, whether it's 1 hour or 6 hours, with the audience looking right at them. And they can see all the nonverbal. One of my coworkers, not a mentor, but someone I felt was an unofficial mentor, would tell this tired old joke at the beginning of every demo. His name was Art, and he was a great guy. Everyone loved Art. And Art would say, people would say, well, hey, my name is Mark Winey, and I've got this many years experience, and the reason I'm a subject matter expert is XYZ, and it'd go on for like a minute. Okay, it's a lot of time. He would say, my name is Art, and a little bit about me. My favorite color is blue, and I like long walks on the beach. That was it. That was it. Now, you're laughing now. And I said to him after observing like his fourth, fifth demo, why do you tell the same tired old joke? And he says, first of all, it's new to every new client. Okay. But there's a reason behind my madness. He says, the reason I tell a dad joke is slipping it in there at the beginning. I'm looking for teeth. I said, teeth? Well, what do you mean? He says, how broadly are they smiling? If they're really broadly smiling and showing teeth, I know I can leverage humor in my demo. If I'm getting a confused, bored, or stern look, it will be buttoned up for the rest of the afternoon.
Smart.
I said, what a great way to quietly read your audience from out of the gate.
And did you do proof of concepts as well? Was that a big part of your role?
Yes, we did. And at times, some companies, our win rates would go up with the POC, and others, they would go down. And you had to know which system you were operating in.
What type of product would it go down and why? You don't need to name the company or anything.
Well, I sold a lot of enterprise software.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it would go down for one of two reasons. Either A, they wanted to go very, very deep into a use case, and we were either unwilling or unable to fully configure it.
Yeah.
Or B, going deep would just expose all the warts and hidden landmines and things that were inherently buggy in the product. Why can't I do it this way? Why does it have to be 12 clicks instead of 2? So those are, the two reasons, a product-based reason or an expectation-based reason. So we control what we can control.
Yeah.
And what we would try to do is, think back to the early days of software. SAP would sell multi-million-dollar deals on, I never worked there, but I've watched them sell multi-million-dollar deals on screenshots, PowerPoint screenshots, because it was too expensive to build out a POC.
Yeah.
So that being said, we would kind of leverage a play from that playbook, and we would say, have them sign a document. This is not user acceptance testing. This is not your production system. You will be given sample data, and you will be told exactly what to put in the search box and what to search for. Because if you put in the wrong thing, you'll get 0 results because we know the sample data.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you specific steps to follow, and your out of the box, your system will not be out of the box. It'll be out of the box for 90 days, then UAT, and then we will capture the configuration requests. And we'll talk about that. So by having that aha moment and level setting, we began to see some more success with POCs.
That's good because, today it's almost impossible to do it without a proof of concept, isn't it? In most sales, some type of trial.
Whether it's a freemium version. I mean, I haven't updated LinkedIn just yet, but I'm working with a startup coming out of stealth, and that's one of the key arguments. It's like, we've got 5 whale customers out of the gate, and we're doing great. Now we're going to enter a new market or a new use case. What do we do? Well, you might be giving it away for 90 days or 60 days or even 30 days for that trial. And if you like it, then I'll keep the license active and you'll get an invoice. And if you don't like it, I'll turn it off. Yeah, people absolutely want to touch it because in this market, inflation rates have bounced up and down and everything else is uncertain. And we might have a great hurricane season and energy prices can go up, whatever that uncertainty is. Nobody wants to make a mistake. So they want to as much hands-on as possible. And they want as much quantifiable ROI as possible to back it up.
Yeah. Same
industry, same use case. So it's a tough environment, but your point is absolutely on point.
Yeah. I mean, also from a sales standpoint, if you don't have a proof of concept, you kind of run out of things to talk about, right? How many presentations, how many referral calls, how many case studies, how many executive briefings can you give before they want to see it work?
Yeah, absolutely. And the dynamic has shifted because it's specific to pre-sales. There's a lot more demo automation, custom self-service demos. You know who all the players are. And I'm not going to promote any one, but there's more and more every day. So customers might have already seen a trade show level demo, or even one of those demo tools providing them, and you know how they work. You fill out a questionnaire and it gives you, based on your criteria, it stitches together an 8-minute demo that feels a little bit configured. So by the time they get to you, they might be ready for a POC.
Right, because part of it's proving that the product does what they want, but the other part is getting them comfortable with the product.
Exactly. And there's that fine line between user acceptance testing and POC.
Yeah.
And a lot of startups, they come in with this concept that we're going to do a whole bunch of POCs and we're going to deliver what they want, and they do all this custom work, but they realize the technology debt, painting themselves into a corner with all these very unique installations. So they finally get to a level of maturity where they're confident to push back on the customer and say, hey, we've done this more than a few times, and this is the right way to do it. We're going to enforce 90 days inside the box. You need to absolutely understand where the corners are before you put in a change request. And the difference is amazing. I've personally watched the change request list go from 60 items when they wanted to do it custom versus, why don't you try it for 90 days and then we'll revisit this list. 60 items suddenly becomes 10 or 8.
Right, because it kind of comes down to, how do I like it, right?
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Right.
That word, feel. That's
Right.
That's the emotion word, not the logic word.
That's what sells, both from a passion perspective, that transfer of passion,
Yes.
as well as the UAT perspective.
And I got to believe that personal connection that the pre-sales person has with the person doing the proof of concept's critical.
It is. Unfortunately, so far, we generally aren't given the same expense accounts, like liberties. No one's ever asked for my credit card.
No?
Like we go out as a team, and it always seems to be the sales guy that takes the
Puts
check.
up the card.
I've really been an advocate for pre-sales having its own budget for 2 reasons. Number one, a sales kickoff, a large portion of it does not apply to pre-sales. Yes, we want to understand the mission, where the company is going, product innovation, and get aligned. Don't make us suffer through the whipping and beating. Oh, sorry, the deal reviews.
QBR.
Yeah. Don't make us suffer through that. Let us have a breakout room or even another city to go meet in, so we can share demos and messaging and what works. Because subconsciously over time it changes. You react to other humans and they react to you. The second reason I'd advocate for its own budget, separate from sales or pre-approved underneath sales, is just getting training, just getting outside. And I know and have worked with a number of vendors, large and small, who focus on pre-sales expertise. And what does a compelling demo look like? I actually did a podcast for 2 pre-sales in a pod, and it just went through transfer and ownership, but there was a delay. But I put up my reasons for like a compelling demo on a few podcasts. Well, actually, that one was more about selling yourself, but then it was we, the sales engineers, where I took a guy who has a podcast, who trains other SEs and is confident about his methodology, watched his demo, and I critiqued it according to methodologies that I've used, multiple methodologies, things that I've seen that have worked and not worked over the years. And I gave him a score of like, I don't know, 6 out of 10 or something like that. And he was very coachable, but there's always reasons to grow. And if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Kaizen, continuous improvement.
Yes.
If you want that in pre-sales, you need training. And sort of as a parting thought, for pre-sales training, I don't have the study on my screen in front of me, but I could send it to you. Harvard Business Review did a study quite a few years ago that said pre-sales is not only essential to closing the deal, but it cycles with proper pre-sales, will cycle the deal 20% faster and actually increase the closing rate by like 12 to 15% as well. So there are measurable advantages to upskilling your pre-sales team.
Yeah. Mark, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn because my name isn't that common. It's Mark with a K. The last name is Winey. It's wine, like the drink, and then you add a Y at the end. And the name is inside my URL. So come find me, and I'm happy to chat.